Hey everyone, today I'm going to be making sourdough sandwich in these tins here. Unlike my regular recipe, I'll be using unsalted butter in the recipe. This will give it an extra soft crumb, perfect for making sandwiches with. So these are the tins that I'm going to be using. These are like a half sandwich size. They're very thin, but pretty tall. We've also got a bit of a shorter version, but they're fatter. And then we have what we call in the industry the 680s. And they're a bit longer than that tin, but it gives you like a longer sandwich. So I'm going to be doing all three different types, and I'll show you what weights I cut the dough at. I'm going to be using my spiral mixer. You can use a stand mixer for this recipe too. If you do have the larger KitchenAid, it's probably better to use this one because it's stronger, but you can use the Artisan if needed. My room's currently 21.7 degrees, and I actually prefer to mix my doughs at 25. So I've got my prover or my heating chamber set to 25 degrees, which is like an old oven that I'm using with just a heating pad inside. I have a video on my channel about how I did this. But yeah, I've got all my ingredients in there at 25 degrees. That's my starter. It's peaking almost, so that's ready to go. I've got the flour and the water. Butter is here and it's nice and soft, but we won't be adding that for until about half an hour into the process. So this will be the recipe, but I'm going to be using bread flour, which is 5 kilos. Now you can use an all-purpose flour, which will make the crumb more soft. The bread flour will give you more height. What I've actually done, is mine is half and half. I've actually put half. This isn't all bread flour. I didn't use 500 grams of bread flour. I used 250 of the bread flour and 250 of the all-purpose flour. So mine's actually half and half. So it's about 2.5 kilos and 2.5 kilos. The recipe will also have 500 grams of butter, which I already have, which is a whole block. This is a 500 block, so that's easy. The starter will be 1 kilo. Salt will be 100 grams. And the sugar will be 120 grams. So the sugar will just give it a little bit more sweetness. You can remove the sugar or replace it with honey or something sweet, but for me I like using the sugar. And the sugar will also help the yeast. It will give the yeast a bit of a boost because you are going to slow down the mix. The butter will slow down the bulk fermentation a bit, so giving it a little bit of sugar will help it. Because I'm not aiming for a complete open crumb like I do with my batards, I will be changing my process. I won't be auto leasing as much, and I will mix a little bit further on the mixer. Because when you over mix with the batards, obviously, when you over mix sourdough, it does make a denser crumb. So I'm going to take all the ingredients out of the prover. Got the 1 kilo of starter, which is peat. Got my 3.2 liters of water. This is at 67.3% hydration. This isn't a high hydration bread. We don't need it to be. We're not going for open crumb. So we don't need to auto lease that much either because it's not a lot of water in the mix, so we can add all the ingredients at the same time. The only ingredient I'm going to hold back on for half an hour, the butter and the salt. I'll add that at the end, but I will put everything else in the mixer and let it sit for a bit. Flour is here at 5 kilos. So I'm going to add all the water. No need to hold back, like I said, it's a low hydration. I'm going to add half the flour. On low speed. All the sugar. The only thing we're going to hold back on is the butter and the salt. I'm going to add 1 kilo of the starter. This is exactly 1 kilo, so that's good. Add the rest of the flour. Now I'm going to mix this for 3 minutes. You just want to make sure there's no dry parts. So sometimes I've just got to get in there and just push it to the middle. But that should be enough now. And I'm going to auto release this for half an hour before adding the salt and the butter. And like always, I just like to cover it so it doesn't dry out. I've written on my production sheet, I always use production sheets just so I have like a record. Like I'll keep them stored so I can go back and look at all my previous bakes so I can compare how long it takes. But yeah, I added the starter at 250 and the dough temperature was 26.2. Last night at 4 a.m, I fed my starter a ratio of 1 to 10 to 10. That was 500 grams of flour, 500 grams of water, and 50 starter. This took about 11 hours to get ready and it was at 25 degrees. I didn't put the temperature, but it was 25 degrees because the approver was set to 25. So when I got home from work today, so I fed this before work, and when I got home, it was ready to go. And unlike my normal sourdough recipe, I'm not going to have to do a lot of stretch and folds. The hydration is pretty low. It's only 67.3%. So we don't need to mix that long, and we don't need to do that many stretch and folds. What I like about sourdough sandwich is you don't really need to be very hands-on with it. We're not going for open crumb, so we don't have to be careful. We actually want to kind of pat it down more when we're putting it in the tins. Now I need to say this, you need to make sure you're using unsalted for this, because if you use salted, we're already adding salt to the recipe, which I've got sitting here while dough auto releases. Always put it on top so I don't forget. We're going to be adding salt to the mix, so we don't want to be having a salted version of this. So unsalted is the best. And I've oiled up my container. Even though we're not going to be doing many stretch and folds, I want it to bulk ferment in the tub. So just add a bit of salt first. That's it. That's the last of the butter and the salt. I'm going to mix this in until I don't see the butter anymore. Making sure any butter that's getting caught on the sides, I'm just sticking in the middle. And the same would go for a stand mixer. And at this point, I'm just going to double check everything at the bottom is picked up, which it is, which is good. So I'm going to keep mixing this until all the butter, there's a little bit there, you can see the butter there. It's all done, it's all in, all the salt. I'm going to keep mixing this until it's smooth. Unlike my sourdough, like I said before, I can push this longer. I'm not going for open crumb. So over mixing isn't really a bad thing with sourdough bread. If anything, I want it to be stronger so it can stand up in height in the tin. I'm going to keep mixing that for probably 3 minutes. So I've put this on speed 6 on my mixer, just for a minute. Yeah, I've got a bit of a high-pitched noise on my mixer lately. It's not affecting the way the machine works. Alright, that's it. I'm going to put that into the tubs. It's a lot easier with this lower hydration dough. You can get all the mix out compared to when you do the sourdough, especially at 80% hydration. I'll cover that up, even though it's empty, it just stops it from drying out too much. The dough is nice, shiny. Get quite a strong window pane on that. This won't need much stretch and fold at all. So I'm going to take a dough sample with my aliquot jar. So I'm just going to take a dough sample from my aliquot jar. Just makes bulk ferment a little bit easier because you can guide how it's going. It's a little bit below the 0, but I'll remember that when it gets. So I want to prove this to about 50 in the tub, and then I'll put it in the tins and prove it to about 75 to 80. And I'll just give it a quick stretch, just to smooth it out. Okay, so that's ready to go. Got my sample, it's in the bulk ferment tub, and I'll probably give this 1 or 2 stretch and folds if needed. I have to have a look. It's not really needed, but I'll do 1 or 2 more to distribute the heat through the mix because the outsides will cool down faster. So sometimes you don't want to stretch and fold, you just want to flip the dough around on itself. And I'll just put it in here at 25 degrees, so it's nice and warm. Because the room temperature is about 21. It's too low, it'll take too long, it'll take all day to prove. So I want it at least 25 degrees. So I've added on here that the dough temperature is 26.1 after I mixed it. I will do a stretch and fold in about an hour and then another one in 2 hours from there. This is probably not going to be needed, so I'll just have a look. Like I said, I'll just flip the dough at least. But when it comes to this sort of dough, you don't really need to stretch and fold that much, especially if you're using the spiral mixer. But I will come back at 4:15, do a dough temp check, and do a dough temp check here. I would usually say it would take 6.5 hours at this temperature to be ready for the banneton or tin. But because we've added sugar, well, the sugar will speed up the mix because it will help the yeast, but the fat here, that's going to slow down the mix. So this is going to speed it up and this is going to slow it down. And there's a lot more fat than there is sugar. So I'd say it's going to be about 8 hours, 8 or 9 hours. But I'm also going to show you 2 ways that I bake. One will be the same day and the second will be in the fridge. But I'll show you that part when I get to it. The mix is nice and clean. I really like to take this chance here to get everything spotless. Just get a bit streaky, but I will clean that. But yeah, I like to keep things organized. I have moved my space around a bit. Got my bannetons there. This is my cooling rack. My excess starter is starting to sink. What I will do is I'll just stick that in the fridge until until next time I bake. And then when I want to use it, I'll pour it out about 3 days before, and I'll empty the jar completely and just feed it with the scrapings. I've got a video on this, but yeah, this is how I feed my starter. So just wet my hands. Just wet my hands. This is actually looking quite good. It's just, I will give it a fold, stretch and fold. Yeah, it's still got a few hours to go, but yeah, it's coming good. It's got fermentation little on the top, you can feel it there. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a slow one, because it always is when you add fat to a mix. But yeah, come back in an hour and have a look at that again. So I'm just going to check this dough. Just check the temperature. It's on 25, so that's fine. I'm not going to stretch and fold because it's quite strong. You can tell by the outside it's very curved. So I'm just going to distribute the heat through. I'm going to leave this for about 2 hours and I'll check it again. Want about 45% rise. I'm going to pre-shape this on the bench and get ready to put it in the tins. So now I'm going to pre-shape this, let it sit on the bench for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then put it in the tin. The dough's looking really, really good. If you actually look at it, it's got a nice curve. So this is about 50% rise. So depending on your tin, you're going to have to experiment what works best for you. So I'm going to put 800 will be the big ones here. These medium-sized ones, sorry. Put that there. It's going to be for these two. So that will be for these two tins. I'll get 1 kilo. 3 of those for the big tins. Good. These 6 are going to be the little ones. That's it. In about 10-15 minutes, I will put them in the tin and they will do the final proof for about 2 to 3 hours. And I've just thrown some flour on the top so it doesn't dry out. And with the extra dough, I'm going to cut it into 100 grams. You can go up to 120 if you want. And I will just do some rolls, which will turn out really nice because they got fat in the dough. It's like a nice, you can really make some nice hamburger rolls with this. They're about 100. Just roll them into a ball. And these are going to get a second proof. So you want to get a little bit of air out of them. So what I do, I just use my palm and I roll, keeping my hand underneath. I'm going to put this one in the prover so it doesn't dry out, and this will spend 3 hours before I bake it. Now I like to bake my sandwich bread without using the fridge. If you wanted to retard it, I would put the tub in the fridge and then cut it the next day if you want to do it that way. Personally, I like to do it on the same day. You could also put it in the tin and put it in the fridge, but then next day you'd have to get the tin out of the fridge and let it get to room temperature, and I find it's never the same. So I find it's better just to do it on the same day. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes. I've sprayed my tins too. Okay, I'll start on the small ones first. It's very puffy. I'm going to stretch it out. Just like when I do my batard, put my thumb into the middle. I want to keep it as straight as possible. And I'm going to throw that in there. This is going to prove for another 2-3 hours at room temperature. So I'm just going to push a little bit of the air, not too much. Nice and smooth. Put that in there too. When I say room temperature, I mean in my prover at 25 degrees, because the room temperature is at 21. So this is about another 2 or 3 hours before I put it in the oven. I do have the oven preheating. This takes about 3 hours. I'm preheating at 250 degrees. Takes about 2.5 hours to heat the oven up. So this should be ready at the same time as the oven's ready. Alright, so that's the little ones done. What I'm going to do is put them in here. So they stay nice and warm and they don't dry out. This one doesn't fit that way. So I can see the other ones. Let me just put one of these towards the front so I can monitor it. The other one's at the back. And that's in there like so. All right. So all that's in there, 25 degrees. It's going to take about 2.5 to 3 hours to get to where I want it to be. Oven takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to get ready, about 2.5 hours to 3 hours at 250 to preheat. I'll drop the temperature. I've got wires on my stones too, because I don't like to scratch the stones with the tins. And a little bit of height off the stone is pretty good. So that's it. In 2 hours, we'll check this. So I'm going to put also, just for a little bit of humidity, it's not the best option, but it's the best option I have. Hot water in a bowl with the door shut. It will just create a little bit more humidity, and humidity stops the dough getting all dry. So yeah, that should help a little bit. It's not the best, but yeah, like I said, it's the only option I have. And I've put my jar back inside just so I can monitor how much it's rising. So we're on like 90%. This one's about here. And the half tin's coming good too. And the bigger tin is almost there as well. The rolls are way off. So I'm going to put this in the oven very shortly. It's already warmed up. The heating lights are off. So I might give this another 10 or 15 minutes and then I'll put them in the oven. So they've been in here for about 2.5 hours. I'm pulling them out, put them on the bench. So yeah, so they jump pretty good in the oven. If I feel it, indents but comes up slowly. So that's what we want. So what I'm going to do is for this one, it's going to have a lid. I want to put flour on half and egg wash on the other half. So flour, flour. This is just egg wash with a little bit of water. And I'll just put that on the top. This will just give it a nice colour. So now I still want this to expand, so I will give it a cut. So it's got somewhere to expand from. And now I will load up the oven. Put the big one at the bottom. So they're in the oven now. I'm going to put a little bit of steam, drop it to 220 and bake it for 40 minutes. And now I'm going to drop the temperature to 220. And bake it for about 30 to 40 minutes. Sorry, I'm going to bake it for 40 minutes. So we're about halfway through the bake. There's a lot of steam. I'm not going to open the door. I'm just going to let steam out with that. With the damper, I should have said. Yeah, these are looking really nice. These are going to get it. This side will get a lot darker because of the egg wash. The floured ones will be nice. I love watching the steam come out this thing. All that steam. I saw the water evaporating from the bread. Alright, so it's been 40 minutes. Let's have a look. Really nice. I'll empty this out. So I've taken the lid off this one, and it needs at least another 10 minutes. So I'll put that to the top deck. So it's in the morning now, it's cooled down. I'm going to cut into one and see how they look. But yeah, no, overall I'm very happy with how these look. They look a bit darker than what they are because of the light. So I will cut into this one. It's very nice. That's how I like my sandwich to be. I'll also cut into this long one. It's really good. These are not as high, but they're on the wider end, so it's got more height. Rolls aren't too bad. I cut these at 100 grams. I probably could have cut about 150, 120 or 150. But these are also nice. They're soft, which is good. A mini roll, to be honest. But yeah, it's really nice and soft. You could make that into a hot dog too. But yeah, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and leave a comment if you have any questions. And thank you for watching.